Hello, and welcome to a bonus box of Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I'm Zeckthar.
And I'm Yuksen.
And this week, we have a very special bonus box for you.
Indeed. Now, I know I've said time and again that we are historians sent by, he that shall not be named, to chronicle and document the histories of the Milky Way system from 40k.
Indeed.
Yes, well, as I have also mentioned many times, we are only supposed to be observers of this war-torn galaxy. Yet, every once in a while, curiosity gets the better of us. Dare I say my brother, and we actually make contact with those within the galaxy.
I dare say now.
Okay, fine. Let's say you instigated. But I wasn't a hard sell.
Fair enough.
Now, while some of these times have been accidents...
Like when we gathered Vulcan's particles from the warp.
Exactly. Or the strange breaching of our library from an orc assault.
We're still stuck with those idiots. Black Rot and Snot Rock.
It's your fault. Yes, but you're the one who let him in. But there have been times when we have actually gone out and discussed matters with those of the Milky Way system. And that can be narrowed down to 4 moments. 4 rare events in the last 60 million years.
Quite right, Yuksen. We've actually revealed ourselves to 4 unique people in the history of the Milky Way system.
Unfortunately, yes. We went away from protocol and talked to those we were studying. In fact, the second time we did, we had a conversation with the Emperor of Mankind about, the midway point of the Great Crusade.
Indeed we did. And we have an actual recorded clip of it, with the narration from Malcador the Sigillite himself. Now, mind you, this is mixed with our own recordings, and Malcador's own self-narrated autobiography. Yet I find it interesting on how he thinks on the concepts.
Yes, well, we figured we would share such insights with you, our dear listeners. So without further ado, our meeting with the Emperor of Mankind. Mind you, we will add anecdotes throughout the program.
Horus, the Emperor's favorite son, had just left the Emperor's personal chambers, leaving myself and the Master of Mankind alone. It had been an excellent report, per usual from the Emperor's first son. The Emperor let a sly smile cross his lips, yet only for a second. I could tell that he felt a slight bit of what is known as pride in his son, which made me glad. Why? Because it reminded me that he was still human, of course. Even with all his awesome powers, it reminded me he was still just a man, happy that his favorite son had triumphed in his father's goals. The smile diminished quickly, though, as he turned his gaze upon me and asked,
Has Rogel Jorn finished his conquest with the Demisian sector?
I was about to nod my assent when I felt something in the room, something I hadn't felt before. It felt as if a swift and chilling breeze had touched my skin, making my flesh goose pimple, and the hairs on my arms stand on end. A blue-hued light orb appeared in the center of the room that began to grow to the size of a normal man. It smelt of ozone and the warp, much like a teleport spell done by a psyker, yet it felt strangely different. First off, no psyker in this galaxy could teleport into the Emperor's personal chambers without his knowledge. After all, no psyker was mighty enough. Secondly, it didn't feel like a psyker spell. It felt uncomfortably foreign, yet before either of us could do anything about it, 2 figures stepped through the orb, and then it began to dissipate.
Xenos.
That seemed to solidify into reality as the orb began to flicker out, with each passing second taking more and more of a corporal form. Lightning crackled in my lord's fist as the 2 emerged. With a growl of defiance, he let loose the energy in his hands at the alien forms in his room. Yet, to my dismay, it just fizzled out before it reached them. Unfazed, my lord pulled his sword, wreathed in flame, and marched towards the intruders. I myself gathered the energy of the warp and prepared a mighty bolt of lightning, Yet as I gathered the energy, something strange happened. I couldn't summon it. In shock, I looked upon my lord as he began to falter, and the fire in his sword began to wicker and then die. That's when the two forms finally took shape, and the orb faded from existence. Fully teleported out of the portal, the two stood, their aura standing as giants. Yet as actual creatures, they were of average size. The taller of the two being just above 6 feet. Yet what held my gaze was the strangeness of his figure. It was a Xenos that I had never seen before. Both were clad in long black cloaks that covered their bodies, save for their hands and heads. Their hands, if I could say that, were very much boned like a human, except 7 tentacles wiggled about as their fingers. Their heads were hairless, a light blue in color. Their eyes were as black as the abyss of space, yet they sparkled, like some hidden jewels twinkled beneath. They had no nostrils, and their mouths were many tentacles that hung low, yet the large one, as it spoke, the tentacles began to move with its speech.
So, you must be the Emperor of Mankind.
My master roared as he swung his sword down at the Xenos that spoke. He put all his fury and hate into the swing, yet the second Xenos grasped his sword as it fell and gave it a slight tug. My master yelped in surprise as the weapon was pulled from him. The second alien held the weapon aloft and examined it.
Ah, yes, a fine weapon, Sir Emperor. A fine weapon indeed. Yet, I'm afraid it will be of no use to you today. Now, mind you, we are not here to harm you. Far from it. We are here to simply play a game.
The larger of the two chuckled and walked over to the large table in my master's quarters. Pulling up a chair, he produced a deck of cards and began to shuffle them in his tentacles.
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Zeckthar, and the fellow that is now holding your sword is Yuksen, and we are the chroniclers of all that was and all that will be. Yet we find you so interesting that we wish to ask you a few questions.
My master scowled at the alien and responded.
And if I refuse,
The alien at the table shook his head and said,
then we will leave, and leave you and your steward unharmed. Yet know this, we are the chroniclers of all in this universe, and you may ask us whatever questions you wish.
With that, I found myself chuckling. How could these two know everything?
You doubt us. Very well, ask us a question.
Before I could ask a question, the alien winked at me, a strange sight to behold. No eyelid flashed down over his twinkling eye, yet the sparkling eye simply flashed as black as the void, giving the impression of a wink as he said,
Ask your question, Brahm. Or should I say, Toby? Yes, I believe that is what your mother called you. After all, your original name was Tobias Akran, before you took the name Brahm al-Kador, who did many sins against mankind.
I glanced at my lord, who gave me the same expression that was strewn across my own face. Shock. Only the Lord of Mankind knew of my true name, and to say that this alien knew my actual name was unsettling to say the least. As I stood there shaking in shock, my lord asked,
What is my true name?
As the large Xeno shuffled the cards, his tentacles around his mouth curled into a comical-looking smile as he responded.
A good yet strange question. To those of the warp, you are known as the Anathema, because you were born of the warp by 100 shamans, who gave their very lives to create you. Yet to your parents, your mother Urda, and your father Plektos, you were known as Little Sigma.
I'd never before seen fear in my lord, yet there it was, paling his face.
How did you know that name?
The taller alien began to deal the cards across the table as he said with a harumph.
Apparently listening is not one of your finer points. I'll say it again. I'm Zeckthar, and this is my brother Yuksen, and we are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be, in the 31st millennium. We've seen the rise and fall of many empires, yet at this moment, we are curious. Perhaps we could change the course of history, if we had but a simple conversation.
Indeed, brother. Perhaps our strange comrades could come and sit at the table? perhaps learn of fates after this game and perhaps learn some knowledge of what was and what will be.
Both my lord and myself were too shocked and too curious to do anything further than to sit at the table for a most interesting game of cards.
Now, Zeckthar, before we carry on with this story, let me tell the folks that we played a simple game of Texas Hold'em that we learned from our travels from Terran 42.
Right you are, Yuksen. For those listening, we explained the rules and played a few hands so that Malcador and the Emperor understood the game. Which I might add, Malcador picked up rather well.
Yes, he did. Well, we played for gold, silver, and copper chips. After the third round, Zeckthar had a slightly larger stack, and while I dealt the next hand, he asked the Emperor his first question.
Well, now that you all understand the rules, perhaps we add an interesting aspect to this game. Perhaps every time you bet, you ask a question, and every time someone raises you, they have to answer. Does that seem fair?
I shrugged a sure at the alien's question, while my lord nodded stiffly.
Very good. Well, I will raise. So my question is, what do you think of unknown aliens? Are they worth diplomacy with, or simply extermination, the more suitable thought?
The Emperor peered over the table and added 4 gold pieces to the pot, saying,
Extermination. Now my question to you is, why shouldn't this be what should be? Every Xenos we have found has demanded blood from us. Why shouldn't we do the same?
The Xenos' facial tentacles gave a frowning look as he snorted.
What about us? We have neither offered battle nor misgivings to you or your steward. What does it say that other Xenos would have the same approach? Perhaps you come across an alien race that wishes only for peace and trade with the great Imperium of Man.
I called with 5 gold coins and responded, We have found no such Xenos in this galaxy, and even if there were those that required peace, how could we, the Imperium of Man, afford it? My lord has already declared that the Xenos is not to be trusted. If we found such a specimen in the galaxy, would it even be worthy of such treaties?
So because you, the Emperor, have decreed it, it cannot be undone? That sounds very, how shall I put it? Divine.
I'm not a god. Things should be changed under the rule of law, after all.
I was surprised at the reaction the 2 aliens gave. They seemed almost shocked, and then the taller one smiled with his facial tentacles, saying,
That is good to hear. We've been wondering about that for millions of years. Why say this? If you truly know everything, you should know that I'm not a god.
A strange look passed between the 2 aliens, and their facial tentacles gave a scowling impression.
While we might know what was and what will be, we do not understand the thoughts of those in history. Not fully.
Why not? Tentacles of the larger alien wreathed into a shrewd smile and said,
Excellent question. Yet, the bet is not yours. I believe it is time for the first 3 cards.
The shorter of the 2 aliens chuckled as he discarded 3 cards, and then dealt the next 3 in the middle of the table. An ace, king, and jack, all of which were of the diamond suit. I myself held a jack and ace of spades, a fine draw for me. Yet I tried to hold my face as deadpan as possible. Perhaps I could take from these aliens all they had. The large alien bets 2 silver pieces and a gold piece, and while he did, he asked the question.
What do you think of your sons? Are they chips off the old block? Or do you have concerns?
Pardon me, brother, but I have to interrupt this chronicling. We should probably clarify when we actually met the Emperor, because then everyone listening will know which Primarchs have been found and which ones were still lost in the galaxy.
It's a fair point, Yuksen. Very well. We had this little card game with the Emperor in the year 850.M30, a single year after the Emperor had found his son, Perturabo.
Yes, so up to this point, he had found Horus Lupercal, sire of the Luna Wolves, Lemonrus, Lord of the Space Wolves, Bartok Flummox, Commander of the Imperial Jackals.
Yuksen, they don't technically exist anymore.
True, but the Emperor had found Bartok by this point and banished him, along with destroying his sons because they were blanks.
True. But we aren't supposed to talk about that. After all, most of our listeners have no idea who you're talking about.
But aren't you doing a bunch of bonus flexes on the Lost Second Legion?
Yes, I am. But until then, how about we just skip past it, shall we?
Sure. After Lehman, we have Ferris Manus of the Iron Hands, followed by Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children. After that, we have Vulcan, Rogel Dorn, Rabute Gilman, Magnus the Red.
Who is actually rather important to our discussions with the Emperor.
Yes, quite right. Let's see. After Magnus was Sanguinius the Lion, and now we are all caught up with Perturabo.
Quite right. And thank you, Yuksen. Now, to get back to the question I asked the Emperor.
Oh, right. What was that again?
What do you think of your sons? Are they chips off the old block? Or do you have concerns?
The Emperor frowned in displeasure as he called. It was not an unusual question to the man, something that I had often asked him.
They are my tools. While they may be of my breeding, they are so in the smallest of fashion. They are my genetic code built into weapons of war, a means to an end, very much as a hammer to drive the nail, being the galaxy.
Zeckthar nodded knowingly and said to his brother,
You see, just as I said, the Emperor has no real sons, only science experiments that seem to be doing rather well at what they are doing. Simple tools to what is his grand design. If we perhaps took Horus back with us, the Emperor would only feel the loss of a tool, like we took his favorite hammer.
My master scowled and then said in a threatening tone,
If that is your plan, my armies will span the galaxy to find and capture you, so I could kill you in my own way and time. And trust me, that would be a slow and painful death. What if you can't find me? I would. I don't care how long it would take me. I would scour the galaxy. And if I couldn't find you there, I would conquer every galaxy to find you. I would. Just for a hammer? If I misplace a hammer, I would spend some time looking for it. But then I would simply make a new hammer. It is, after all, just a tool.
My master sat there for a second with his mouth open in explanation, yet no words formed. He was stumped.
Unless, of course, the sons you have spent time with are now more than simply tools.
The Emperor's mouth clamped shut as he glared at the shorter alien. His mouth opened again, and it seemed he would give an angry retort. Yet, his voice died before he spoke. For a second, I saw something on my master's face that I had never seen before. Confusion. I waited a second, and then raised my 2 gold coins and said, I believe it is my question now. What part of the galaxy are you strange fellows from? I don't believe I've ever seen any mention of your race come across my desk in any manner. Yuksen's tentacles curled into a smile as he tossed his chips in, only raising a single copper piece.
An interesting question. Unfortunately for you, we do not hail from this galaxy, nor do we reside in the Milky Way system.
Well then, where do you reside? The alien's facial tentacles frowned as he glanced at his brother.
Technically, that is the second question, requiring you to bet again.
I waggled my finger good-humoredly at the Xenos and said, Oh, come now. The crux of my question is where you are from, and you know it. If you're going to give half answers, then what's our motive to play for questions? Zeckthar chuckled and held his hands up.
You got us there, Malcador. Very well. We will answer your questions in full, provided you and your master answer us in kind. And as far as I've heard, he has not answered our last question.
All eyes turned to the Emperor, who sat in deep thought.
Perhaps all of my tools are not simply tools.
Looking back into Zekthar's eyes, the Emperor finished firmly.
Some of my tools are more important to me than others. My sons are my most prized utensils, and some of them I hold affection for more than others.
Horus, Magnus, Rebrute, Sanguinius, these are all special tools? Something that can be replaced, yet at great cost?
My master looked down at his cards, deep in thought.
No, Horus is special. Horus cannot be replaced.
Why?
I had watched my master conquer entire systems. I had watched as he unified Terra under his iron rule. I was there in the quiet moments when he felt concern for what he was doing, and I was the reminder that he did everything for humanity. Throughout everything, there was only a handful of times I watched him shed a tear, and this was the last time I saw it. A single tear left his red-rimmed eye as he said hoarsely,
Because he is my son. I taught him. I watched him grow from a wide-eyed student to a master of war. We hunted together. We talked of history and strategy. He is my son, my legacy. That is all we wanted to know.
Zeckthar said as he patted the master of mankind's shoulder in comfort. A strange thing to see, yet there it was. They held this tableau for a moment or two, until Yuksen harumphed.
Well, to answer your question, Toby, or Malcador, we live on a small self-made planet called the Forge of the Bastionic Tempest, about 3 systems away from the Milky Way, called the Photonus Expendium System. We have been assigned there to watch the Milky Way and observe under orders of he who shall not be named. Yet, I believe I raised, so the question is now mine to ask. Why did you keep the 1,000 suns instead of destroying them? After all, they showed mutant disabilities.
The Emperor shook his shoulders, rubbing off Zekthar's reassuring, tentacles? And said with a tight smile,
I do not exterminate legions because they are hard to work with.
What about Bartok's Legion? The second Legion you exterminated.
Well, I was in shock that they knew of the Second Legion. My master laughed with good humor and said,
Yes, I did. Bartok, and more importantly, his jackals were blanks, meaning they were far too beyond my control and dangerous. So his legion was destroyed about the time we found him. Yet Bartok could prove useful, so I sent him on his way as a rogue trader, and he has proved a fruitful son. Yet the 15th Legion has always been loyal, yet had some defects. So we froze those that were defected and hoped that when we found their father, they were salvageable. We were right, and with Magnus's help, we were able to stop the changing of his legion.
Zeckthar called the pot, followed by the Emperor and myself, so the next card was played. Ace of Hearts. Inside my mind, I was doing a jig. I had a strong full house. It took every ounce of my willpower to keep my face indistinguishable. Zeckthar kicked 3 gold coins into the pot and asked,
What happens if you conquer the Milky Way system, and humanity is all that is left? What will you do?
The Emperor smiled with great joy as he raised a single gold piece.
Humanity will prosper and grow to a new age of glory. She will see a new birth in technology, and the glorious future the likes of which humanity has never seen before.
Zekthar's facial tentacles curled into a smile as he responded.
Yes, a light in the dark. Yet, you haven't answered my question.
My master gave the Xenos a curious look, and the alien responded.
Well, you said what humanity would do, but I asked what would you do? Oh, come now. We both know that you are a conqueror and a warrior at heart, as well as mine. What would you do in this time of peace? Would you rule benevolently in the halls of Terra, passing edicts and measuring taxes? Or would you find a new galaxy to conquer?
The Emperor's brow furrowed in thought.
No. Not with the eye of terror. With the chaotic gods and their mischievous ways, there would be no peace. And I would always have to remain vigilant against such darkness.
I see. A guardian of humanity without end. That is your final goal?
Before my master could answer, I raised 2 gold pieces and said, I believe the question is mine to ask. Who is he who shall not be named? The facial tentacles of the smaller Xenos upturned into a frown and grumbled as he spoke to his brother.
This is why we don't talk to those we're observing.
Zeckthar shrugged and said,
I'm sorry, Malcador. That is the only question that is not on the table for answering. But to answer your question in a roundabout way, he is the creator. The one who created not just this galaxy, but thousands of others. Well, I can't say who he is. I will say that your Milky Way system is one of the later star systems he created. Yet, on a secret note, every one of them has an aspect of humanity in it.
Why?
Why not?
Before I could respond with a billion more questions, Yuksen added another raise of 3 gold coins to the pot and said,
Enough! It is my bet, therefore my question. Why do you place conquest over the Webway project known as the Golden Throne?
I sucked in my breath of shock. Nobody was supposed to know about the Golden Throne. Nobody. The only people working on it at this point was myself and the Emperor. Sure, we found a device to use under the palace of the Emperor, yet we were just figuring out how to try to use it. The secret project was intended to open up the Aldari Webway to mankind by establishing a portal into its galaxy-spanning network from Terra. The secret project was intended to open up the Aldari Webway to mankind by establishing a portal into its galaxy-spanning network from Terra. This would provide a means of instantaneous interstellar travel between worlds of a newborn Imperium of Man, making navigation through the dangers of the warp unnecessary and literally connecting all the worlds of humanity instantaneously. This would create a truly unified human race as never before seen in history. My master believed that this level of unity would be necessary if humanity was truly to thrive and prosper in such a dangerous universe. What? I don't know what you're talking about.
We said this already. I am Zeckthar, and he is Yuksen, and we are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be after you. We know everything.
Yes, and my question is simple. Why do you place conquest over the Webway project known as the Golden Throne?
We don't know enough about it yet. Not only that, but for humanity to be secure, we need to conquer the galaxy. The two go hand in hand. Eventually, the Golden Throne will require all of my time. Yet, that time has not yet come. After all, many of my sons have yet to be found.
I see. You have an incomplete tool set, and to finish your work, you need the rest of your tools.
The Emperor frowned, yet affirmed with a nod as he called. With the round completed, Yuksen added the last community card, the Ace of Clubs. 4 of a kind! I had 4 of a kind! I looked at all the stacks of my competitors and realized that only the Emperor and Zeckthar had more chips. The Emperor had about 3 silver pieces and 2 gold pieces more than me, while Zeckthar had a solid 10 gold chips more than I. Time to play it cool, I thought as I waited for Zeckthar to bet and ask his question. The larger alien looked across the table at me, and it took every ounce of energy I had to keep as deadpan of a face as I could. He then glanced over at Yuksen, then turned his gaze to the Emperor. He dropped 10 gold pieces into the pot as he asked,
How do you think humanity will survive after you're gone?
The Emperor smiled slyly at the alien as he pushed all the chips into the pot.
All in. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm immortal, a perpetual.
The smile dimmed from the Emperor's face as he took in Zekthar's eyes. The alien's facial tentacles seemed to be smiling.
You should know that.
The Emperor said quietly, and the alien nodded, saying,
I do. You are a perpetual, a nigh immortal being, yet not truly immortal. Not like Yuksen and myself. You can be killed. Is that the reason why you're truly here? To kill me?
the Emperor said in little more than a whisper.
No. No. Just that there are things that can kill a perpetual. And with you being a conqueror and a world claimer, the chances are you will find something that does eventually kill you.
All in. So, are you saying that my master will die? The two aliens looked at each other, and even though no words were spoken, we could tell they were communicating with each other. Yuksen's eyes narrowed while Zeckthar sadly shook his head. Slamming his tentacled hand down on the table, Yuksen exclaimed,
This is why we aren't supposed to talk with those we are supposed to observe. They have no need to hear the future, nor are they willing to accept it.
Perhaps not. So I fall in battle. If that is to be the case, then so be it. Just tell me this. Will humanity survive after my demise? Will it flourish?
Zekthar's facial tentacles smiled sadly as he said,
I'm afraid you're all out of questions, good sir.
The question wasn't his, it was mine.
True. Yet the Emperor has yet to answer my brother's question. He answers my brother, and Zeckthar shall give you yours.
All eyes turned to the Emperor, the Lord of Humanity. He sat for a moment, his eyes closed in deep thought.
I hope that man remembers me as a scion of humanity, an echoing cry of greatness, an example of what humanity can do, and give people a reason to go beyond comfort and do what needs to be done, not just to survive, but to thrive, to learn, to expand, to know that even if I'm gone, to rule the galaxy with an iron fist, to dominate the worlds of this galaxy and conquer new systems beyond the halo stars, to understand that to be human is to be great and all that is good in the universe. If I die, then I wish that they remember me as a hero, a conqueror, and a leader of men. Yet above all, I wish they use me in death as a tool to remind them to put aside the petty squabbles of greed and malicious intent for the glory of humanity. To remember here was a man that put aside godhood for the greater glory of all.
A tear dropped from my eye as I sat in the presence of the greatest man that I'd ever known, my friend. Even with the foretelling of his demise, he wished only for humanity, for mankind, to remember him as a son, as a scion of what they could be and what they should be. Yet my heart broke from the thought that he would not be there to see it. He answered your damn question. Now answer mine. Yuksen's facial tentacles frowned as he glared at me, but before he could speak, Zeckthar gave me my answer. Yet to this day, it was an answer that I didn't want to hear.
Yes, your master dies, but not for another 13,000 years.
I sighed with relief, and my lord began to smile. Yet his smile dimmed and then faded into a ghost-like shock as the alien continued.
In the next few hundred years, a horrific civil war will grasp humanity, pitting you against one of your sons. It will be short, yet brutal, and your son shall strike you down, yet you will extinguish him from existence. Wounded beyond healing, he will complete the Golden Throne project, partially. Sitting upon the Golden Throne, he will keep humanity at bay from the warp and help them continue to use warp speed technology, as well as become a shield to warp entities. Unfortunately, because of this, humanity will deem you as a god, and all of humanity will worship you as such, other than a few Astartes chapters. Your body will slowly ebb away, and the only thing keeping you going is the souls of 1,000 innocent souls, sacrificed every day to the Golden Throne. This will continue for 13,000 years. Yes, 48 billion souls of humanity will perish to keep you sitting on the Golden Throne until you eventually are reborn, and then, in a new body, take your place once again as the leader of humanity. Yet before you do so, the Eye of Terror will split anew. Chaos and all her demons, along with the four unholy gods, will walk the material, bringing horror and calamity with them. With your last act, you will do battle with them and fail. This is the crescendo of your song, And as you take your last gasp of life, you summon all that you are and everything you have, sending the four horrendous gods back into the warp. While your very essence dies, you become a shield against the very warp itself, keeping everything within the warp at bay. With your heroic sacrifice, humanity will cry as one, your victory, but mankind will be left without means of warp travel. Yet, as you lay dying, you will leave a final quest to one of your sons, and at the end of it, a glorious means to fast and light travel, which he will follow. Your son will complete your quest, yet in the end he will die. But in doing so, he will succeed, leaving humanity in a dark and uncertain time. Yet with the freedom of having not to deal with the warp, along with all the horrors that remain there. That is your song, and that is where you meet your end.
We sat in silence for a while, my master and I.
I call.
Yuksen said as he pushed all his chips into the pot.
And I believe I have the last question. Now that you know this, what would you change?
Change? Everything! Before I could continue, my master held up his right hand for silence.
Shall we play another hand?
Yuksen shook his head.
No more questions.
The Emperor smiled and said with a nod,
Then so be it.
What? My master gave me a stern look, yet I continued. We could change fate! Simple questions could be asked, like, who betrays you? Why the Webway project doesn't work? Why does humanity see you as a damned god? My lord smiled at me with an understanding that only he knew and said,
That would require another game. More importantly, I am content with the concept that I freed humanity from the warp, even if it means my demise.
My mouth opened in anger to spit out a quick retort, yet was held in respite. My master's goal was to unite humanity and banish the chaos gods. In his mind, this was a victory. Yet with all my years and knowledge, I could not see the light of a new beginning without my master. It felt unclean. Before I could respond, Zeckthar laughed loudly and said,
Well done, Emperor. You are definitely a steward of humanity. Yet, unfortunately, you will lose this hand, because I have a full house. Ah.
And with that, he showed his cards, a jack of spades and a two of hearts.
Bah, you beat me.
My master said as he tossed his cards onto the table.
I only had a straight.
The Emperor's cards were a 10 of hearts and a queen of spades. As the alien's tentacles started to gather the pot, I objected. I demand a question.
Why?
Because I won, I said with a sly smile as I produced my cards, the jack and ace of spades. A four of a kind beats a full house.
No more questions. You already know too much about the future, which, by the way, may change it. Quite frankly, we really aren't supposed to talk to you guys. Besides, you didn't win.
The smaller alien flipped over his hand, a queen and a 10 of diamonds.
I believe a royal straight flush beats a four of a kind.
With that said, the alien scooped up the chips and winked at me, tossing me a single golden chip, saying as he bowed deeply to me,
It was a pleasure.
Before I could say anything, the two disappeared with a snap, leaving my master and me alone to contemplate the meeting. I glanced down at the coin that the alien tossed me. On the face was an eagle, yet instead of a beak, tentacles shot out in every direction. I flipped it over, and there was a strange building that I had never seen before, but really caught my eye was the words that splayed over the coin. It was in High Gothic, saying, Vedete quid optes. As I tried to understand the meaning of what this meant, my lord patted me on the back and said,
Quickly, we have much work to do. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this box. And join us next time when we...
Wait a minute!
Yes, Yuksen?
What about the coin I gave him? What about the hidden message I sent him? Did he figure it out?
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time for this box. Perhaps in another box, you can discuss the time you personally spoke with Malcador?
You knew about that?
Of course I did. We're brothers, after all. And I believe the term from He Who Shall Not Be Named, I am my brother's keeper.
Well, why don't you say anything?
Like I said, we are out of time for this box. I hope you found it interesting. And if you did, by all means, like, follow, and of course, subscribe.
Yes. And if you really enjoyed this box, by all means, help us by becoming a member on our YouTube channel, Tales of Ashraka, or becoming a donor on our Spotify channel.
Indeed. With that said, as always, have a great day. And until next time, this is Zeckthar.
And Yuksen.
Signing off.